and welcome to the first week of the Cuddle Monster Crochet Along Together. This week we're going to be working on the eyes, the mouth, and starting up the body. Make sure you have a copy of the pattern with you ready to go because these videos are supplementary to the pattern. And let's get started. To start with the eye, we're going to be using our 3.0 millimeter olive wood crochet hook and our black, just one strand of DK weight black scrap yarn, and you're going to be doing 6 single crochet in a magic circle. I do my magic circles by pulling up a loop and chaining one, and you kind of get this space here. So I'm going to put 6 single crochet in there. Once you've got your 6 single crochet in your magic loop, you can go ahead and close it up. And for all of the pieces we're going to be making, we're not going to be slip stitching to join at the end of the round. We're just going to be working continuous rounds. So you may find it easier to keep track of the beginning of your round by using a removable stitch marker. I'm going to be using these Addi Soul stitch markers, which will be coming out in the fall. So what I like to do is I like to slip the stitch marker into the last stitch of the previous round. So for round 2, we're going to do 2 single crochet in each stitch around. That's going to give us a nice increase all the way around. Now when we get back around, our stitch marker is in the last stitch, so we will work our last 2 in that last stitch there. And then just replace the stitch marker in the last stitch you made. So for round 3, we're going to do 2 single crochet in the next single crochet, and then just 1 single crochet in the next single crochet around. So 2, which will be an increase, and then just 1 in the next one. 2, and 1. And what this is doing is it's spacing out our increases, and that's going to give us this flat circle piece for the eye. So that is the end of round 3. Now for round 4, we're going to be switching to main color, or this could be any other color that you'd like your iris to be. So I'm going to be using some of this dark pink for my iris. And because I'm switching colors, I'm going to drop that last stitch and undo it so that I can finish it with my new color. You want that last completion of the previous stitch to be done in your new color when you're changing colors. And now I'm not going to use a stitch marker for this round because I'm going to go ahead and see the beginning of my round because I changed colors. So for round 4, we're going to do 2 single crochet in the next single crochet, and then just 1 single crochet in the next 2 single crochet, 4 times total with this color. So we've got 2 in that one, and then we're just going to put 1 in the next 2, and then 2 in the next stitch. Again, just spacing out our increases. 2 in the next, or 1 in the next 2, 2 stitches in the next one, and then 1 in the next 2. And so we've done that 1, 2, 3 times, so one more time. So this is the last stitch in pink, so I'm going to stop before completing it because we're going back to black. So you can just go ahead and pick up your black that you dropped from before, which will carry the strand across the back of your work, but that's okay. You won't see that part after we've sewn this down. Just make sure to keep a decent tension when you're rejoining with that black, carrying that strand across the back. So with black, we're going to do the same thing we've been doing, the 2 single crochet in the next stitch, then 1 in the next 2 single crochet, 2 times total, and that will bring us to the end of the round. This is the last stitch in my round here, and we're going to be switching colors, so I stopped before I completed it. And now we're switching to white. So complete that last stitch with white. And then for the rest of round 5, we're going to be doing 2 single crochet in the next stitch, and then 1 single crochet in the next 3 stitches. And I'm not using a stitch marker here because, again, we changed colors, so we'll be able to see where the beginning of our round is. Now for round 6, we're going to be doing 2 single crochet in the next single crochet and 1 single crochet in the next 4 single crochet around. Now if you don't want eyelashes on your eyes, you can go ahead and stop here, but if you do want the eyelashes, we need to switch to black for row 7. So I'm going to undo that stitch and finish it switching to black, and I'm just using where we left off with the black before, carrying it up the back. Now we're going to do 1 single crochet in the next 2 single crochets. So 1, 2. We're going to do a slip stitch in the next single crochet. We're going to chain 1 and turn. Now we're going to do 2 slip stitches. So slip stitch in the single crochet you just made and the next one. And we're going to do a single crochet in the next 10 single crochets. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. You're going to chain 5, and you're going to slip stitch in the second chain from your hook and the next 3. This is creating our longest eyelash. Now you're going to single crochet in the same stitch as your previous single crochet, which is right there. You're going to do a single crochet in the next 2 single crochets. Chain 4. Slip stitch in the second chain from your hook and the next 2 chains. And then you're going to put a single crochet in the same stitch as your previous one. You're going to do a single crochet in the next single crochet, chain 3, slip stitch in the second chain from your hook and the next chain, you're going to put a single crochet in the same space as your previous single crochet, and then you're going to slip stitch in the next single crochet, and that is going to complete our eye. So you can go ahead, and I like to do one more chain before I cut my yarn. I'm going to leave a little bit of a tail because I like to sew my eyelashes down. You may choose to have yours kind of free hanging, but I like to sew mine down. So same with the eye, the white, I'm going to leave a long tail to sew that to the body. The other yarn that's still attached, or your tails, you can trim down just a couple inches tall, because what we can do when we go to attach that, let me pull this through, is we can kind of twist it up and hide it when we go to sew our eye down. So your right eye should look a little something like this. For the left eye, you're going to repeat the same thing up to row 7, and then row 7 is going to be a little bit different because we want to mirror those eyelashes. Again, if you're not doing the eyelashes, you just make the exact same eye as the right eye and skip row 7. So for the left eye, I'm going to switch to black on the last stitch of round 6, and then we're going to work row 7 for the left eye. So you're going to slip stitch in the next 4 single crochet. So 1, 2, 3, 4. Now we're going to chain 3 and turn. Slip stitch in the second chain from your hook and the next chain as well. And you're going to single crochet in the next 2 slip stitches. And when I do this, I actually like to work around the single crochet and the slip stitch that you did. So I'm going to go in here, and you can see that's going to work over the top of the slip stitch and through the single crochet. I find that it's a little sturdier when worked this way. So I'm going to do that twice. Chain 4, slip stitch in the second chain from the hook, and the next 2, and we're going to do a single crochet in the same stitch as the previous single crochet. We're going to put a single crochet in the next 2 single crochet, which one is still that slip stitch. We're going to chain 5, slip stitch in the second chain from your hook and and the next 3. Single crochet in the same stitch as the previous single crochet, and then we're going to do a single crochet in the next 12 single crochet. And that's it for the left eye, so you can go ahead and do one more chain. Cut your yarn, leaving the long tail to sew down the eyelashes, and also a long tail on your white to sew down the eye later. And so what this should give you is 2 mirrored eyes with eyelashes. Now we need to make our eye highlights. So using our white and still our 3.0 millimeter hook, we're going to do 6 single crochet in a magic circle and slip stitch to join. So once you get your 6, you can close up your circle, slip stitch to that first single crochet to join. We've got a little circle, and that's it. We want just a small little highlight. So you can finish it off and leave a long tail to sew this onto your eye, and you have to make 2 of these. So go ahead and make a second one. And now it's time to sew our eye highlights onto the eyes. Now you want to make sure you place them inside the pupil so that they get a nice contrast. If you place them kind of overlapping the white of the eye, there's not really as much of a pop, but you may choose to do that if you like the way that looks. But I like to keep mine inside the pupil in the upper right or left hand corner. So for example, this original monster, I put them on the upper outer corners. And then for this monster, I put them in the upper inner corners. So you may choose to do whichever is more pleasing to you. I'm going to go ahead and do this one again, the upper inner corner. I do like it a little bit better. What I like to do when I place these highlights is you've got that tail from where you started. I cut that one shorter and I sew with the ending tail. But I like to use this little beginning tail kind of to help me place where I want my highlight to go. So I kind of set the highlight right here. I'm going to go upper inner corner, and I take my crochet hook and I put it up right in the middle. Make sure you can see that, and I grab that tail and pull it through. And so that kind of helps me place it before I get ready to sew. Also, it gets the tail out of the way without having to do any extra seaming. So I'm going to do that for the same over on this eye. Upper right hand corner for the left eye, upper left hand corner for the right eye. Just taking your hook and pulling that first thread through. Then you're ready to sew them down. So I'll show you how I like to sew mine in. There's really no right or wrong way as long as it's stitched down in the location that you want. But I find you get a little bit cleaner of a look if when you sew, you're going through the 2 stitches of the single crochet as if you were to work into it. So I like to kind of keep my thumb to help it stay where I want it as I'm sewing. So I'm going to go through those 2 loops and straight down. Now it's going to sew the piece where you're sticking your needle into the eye. So even though I'm holding it here, if I go through here and I stick my needle way up here, it's going to start sewing this up there, and I don't want that. So you want to make sure you go straight down. And then when I come up, same thing, you want to make sure you're coming up where you want that piece to be sewn down. And I'm going to grab the 2 top loops of the next stitch, trying my best not to split any stitches. And I found that this just gives a really clean appearance. And I just do that all the way around until it's sewn down. Try not to catch your eyelashes and sew those down. You're definitely going to want to work slow for this point, especially if you don't have a lot of experience sewing things down, and kind of check where you're at as you sew to make sure you're not sewing it down in a spot that you don't like. The yarn can be stretchy as you get ready to sew it. So you can see here, it's kind of not, it's looking more like an oval and not a circle, but I haven't sewn this section down to kind of stretch it out. I'm going to put my needle out just a little bit further, and when I grab those last 2 stitches. And what that's going to do is that's going to pull that section out, and now you can see it already is looking much more circular than it was. Be careful that you don't sew any of your ends through. I saw some weird, strange white poking up, and it looks like I must have snagged some of my tails as I was sewing. You want to be careful not to do that. You don't want to pull those through. It's okay if you sew them down like I did here, but you don't want to sew them up through the front. So that's what one time around looks like. You can continue to go around another time if you feel like it's not quite secure, or if you want to try stretching your shape out in any direction. Like I can probably come back up and bring this out just a little bit more. Yeah, that looks much better. So I'm going to call that one done, and you really can just leave your tail. I like to just snag a little bit back here, making sure that it's not showing through the front, just to kind of secure that in just a little bit more, because I'm going to leave all these raw when I sew the eyes down. You won't see it on the finished monster. So right eye is done, and you're just going to repeat that for sewing down the highlight on the left eye as well. Once your eyes are done, it's time to make the mouth and the tongue. So to start with the mouth, we're going to use our black and the 3.0 hook again. And we're going to chain 10. And we're going to do a single crochet in the second chain from our hook and the next 8 chains. Then you're going to do a chain 1 and turn. Now we're going to do a single crochet 2 together. Now how you do that is you're going to go into the first single crochet, and you're going to pull up a loop, and then you're going to go into the second single crochet, pull up a loop, and then yarn over and pull through everything. So that's created 2 single crochets in this area, but only 1 stitch coming out of the top. Now we're going to do a single crochet in the next 5 single crochets. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then we're going to single crochet 2 together again. So go in, pull up a loop, go into the second single crochet, should be your last one, pull up a loop, then yarn over and pull through everything. Then we're going to chain 1 and turn. Now we're going to skip 3 single crochet, and then we're going to do 8 double crochet in the next single crochet. So we're skipping 1, 2, 3, and so in this stitch we're going to place 8 double crochets. It's going to give you kind of this, fan looking shape here. And then we're going to skip 2 single crochet and slip stitch in the last single crochet. So skip 1, skip 2, here's our last one, and we're slip stitching. And that's all it is for our mouth, so you can just go ahead and finish it off. Do the chain 1, then leave a tail for sewing. And you should have kind of this semi-circle, oblong, almost triangular mouth shape. The tongue is optional, but I do like the way it looks, and if you want to make one, you'll have to pick either a pink or maybe a red colored amount of scrap yarn, and with the 3.0 millimeter hook, you're going to chain 4. And then you're going to do 4 double crochet in the 4th chain from your hook. And that's all there is to the tongue, so you can finish it off and leave a tail for sewing. Now once you have the mouth and tongue done, it's time to sew it on. Now you can choose to sew it the way I have, which is kind of this fan shape pointing up, but you can also sew it the other direction, which is with the fan shape pointing down. Either way looks cute, it's totally up to you. I chose to do both of them fan shape up. It gives more of a curved tongue versus like a flat tongue. So I do the same thing I do with my highlight, which I take that beginning piece, and when I've laid it on top of the mouth where I want it to go, I take my hook and I pop that through the back. Just to kind of get it out of the way. And then you'll just use your other tail to sew the mouth in place like you did the highlight. When I sew the mouth down, I like to make sure some of the bottom of the black is visible. I feel like it gives more depth to the mouth. And again, as you're sewing, make sure to kind of check where you're at and that things are going down in the places you want them to. If you sew something down and you don't like where it's placed, you can unpick your last couple of stitches and redo. Then hopefully your mouth will look something like this. Once you've finished your eyes and your mouth, it's time to move on to the body. Now this is where things can get a little tricky, but don't stress, we will make this work. So for the body, you're going to need a strand of Simplicity in your main color and a strand of Caribou in your main color. Now Caribou is this eyelash type of a novelty yarn, and because of these long strands, you'll see as we work, it starts to obstruct our view of our stitches a little bit. That's why I've chosen a kind of contrasting color. It's not really going to show because this eyelash part of the yarn is going to create the fuzz around our monster, and so especially if you've never worked with this type of yarn before, it may be helpful if you have a slightly contrasting color to help you see your stitches, but we'll talk about that as we go. So you're going to want to make sure you have a removable stitch marker to keep track of the beginning of your round. I'm using the Addie Soul stitch markers, which are coming out later in the fall, but anything that is removable will work because we will have to move this every round. Also, as we work, you're going to want to count your stitches. It may be hard to count them after the fact, so I like to count them as I go and keep track as I go and do my best not to stop in the middle of a row. So to start, we're going to do 6 single crochet in a magic circle, which is going to be kind of hard to see. So I've definitely got my finger pinched here on my circle, and if you have any other methods for creating your circle, you're going to want to make sure you don't lose it either, and really feel. Sometimes working with this yarn, it's more about feeling than it is about seeing. So I've got my thumb and middle finger here pinched on my circle so I don't lose it, and I'm going to work 6, and I'm going to count them as I work them, as I mentioned already. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. Now I'm going to put my locking stitch marker in that 6th stitch. Now you can see my orange yarn poking through the lighter pink, which is really nice for demonstration and for, you know, when you first start out working with this type of yarn. So I've got my marker in this last stitch here. I'm not even going to bother to close it because it's such a big loop. We'll be okay. And if you have a similar stitch marker, you may not have to close it either. Just make sure it doesn't come out. Now, this is the right side of our work. It's going to be the inside of our work. And this wrong side is what's going to be the outside. And see how you can almost not see the orange through it all? So for the second round, we're going to do 2 single crochet in each single crochet around, just as we did when we started our eyes. Now, it's a little difficult to see our stitches even with my contrasting color. You can try to push some of that eyelash yarn out of the way. You can kind of push it down and out of the way. That will help. You can try to see where your previous stitch came from and go, okay, I don't want to go there. I want to go into what's next. Feel for the hole. Feel for those top 2 stitches. And if you don't get exactly the top 2, maybe just get 1, maybe you go a little bit deeper. It's not that big of a deal. You won't be able to see it. What's important is that we get the right number of stitches each round that we work. So it feels like my next stitch is right here. And you can kind of see that orange yarn too. And even if I just work into the 1 loop, that's okay. This yarn is so fluffy and fills up so much space, it won't create a gap or anything. So I'm going to work 2, 1, 2 into the same space. I'm going to work into what feels like my next 2 again. So 3, 4. Same thing in the next. 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Now back to my stitch marker in my last stitch, because I always mark my last stitch of the round. We're going to work our 11 and 12. Now, if for any reason you're already off, you can fudge it a little bit. This monster overall has a round shaped body, but it's not going to be that noticeable if it's not perfectly round because there's so much fuzz. So much fuzz. So once I finish the last stitch of that round, I put my stitch marker right back in there, and it's time for round 3. These first few rounds we're really just increasing and spacing our increases out like we have before. We're building out the base of our monster before we go up. So for round 3, we're going to do 2 single crochet in the next single crochet and 1 single crochet in the next. Now, I've practiced working with this yarn before, so I feel much more comfortable, but if this is new to you, definitely know I can't really see my stitches. The orange helps, but I rely mostly on feeling and just kind of trusting my gut. So try not to get too caught up in making sure it's absolutely perfect. Like I said, we really just want to focus on making sure we get our increases in and we have the right number of stitches at the end of the round, even if you have to fudge it just a little bit. So this round is 2 in that next single crochet and just 1 in the next. So that's 3, 2 is 4 and 5, and then 6 and 7 and 8 and 9, 10, 11 and 12, 13, 14 and 15, 16, 17, and that last stitch in my marked stitch here will be 18. So I do have the stitch count at the end of each row specifically for this reason. It's very important to make sure your stitch count is right to make sure that your monster turns out similar to the one that I designed. Now, yours may look a little different, but that's okay. Now if we flip this over, see, it's just fuzz, and if I pull kind of hard you can see the orange underneath, but it really barely shows through. For the next round we're going to do 2 single crochet in the next single crochet and a single crochet in the next 2, and so I'm not gonna keep going here. You guys kind of get the idea with how the increases are going and how this is going to work and how this is going to look. Just make sure you're counting as you go. Now I could try to count. I counted 18 as I went, and if I go back and try to count, it's best to try to move the eyelash yarn and try to count where you can see that simplicity. So 1, 2, 3, 4, but you can see in some areas it just gets difficult. 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18. But if your simplicity is similar in color to the caribou, it's going to be even harder to count. So again, I recommend counting as you go, and just make sure you're increasing in pattern, and that should get us halfway up through the body for the end of this week. Awesome, so now you should have a little bit of a base to your monster and your eyes and mouth ready to go for next week, and we're going to be building up the rest of the monster. So check in next week for the next update to the pattern and the next video. I'll see you then.